Joining me now to discuss faith, or the lack thereof, in the tech world is Peter Rex, the founder and CEO of Rex, a technology investment and real estate company. Peter, great to have you here. You wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal recently entitled Silicon Valley's Secret Christians on the attitudes the tech world has towards those who are religious. You wrote, "I've experienced the combination of hesitation and hostility toward my Catholic faith." What are the main reasons you believe faith is kept at a distance?
Well, Montse, I think the problem here is very complex, and I'm going to provide a solution as well to everybody out here, because there's a lot of hope. And really the message I have is one of hope. But first, we got to jump in to assess the problem. And the problem is very complex. It is not going to be a simple solution or a simple-minded solution, as I like to call it. It's going to be a complex, elegant solution to solve it. And the problem when I dive into it is that we have an ecosystem in Silicon Valley and Seattle that is breeding intolerance. And where is this coming from, right? It's coming from university systems. Berkeley is a feeder school out there. It's not a place where Christianity is thriving, or really people of faith are really thriving. And there's a lot of intolerance coming through this university system that sort of brainwashes the kids when they come out. Then they enter into a city that has become more intolerant as well, like Seattle and San Francisco. Then they go to companies that are likewise becoming more and more intolerant. So there's a reinforcing intolerance, and they get themselves stuck in an echo chamber where they think they're actually moderate, but they're actually radicalized. They think they're actually tolerant, but they're extremely intolerant towards people of faith and Christianity, and they're really against religion. They sort of have these superficial arguments against, the Inquisitions or the Crusades, where they don't really understand the historical context of these things, nor do they understand how to separate an ideology from a sinful people.
Right. Well, you talked to us about the way academia is fostering this lack of religious engagement, really. But is there something more that the culture is doing in this rise of anti-religious sentiment? Is it secularism?
Well, I think it's right now we have in the technology industry, it's a very concentrated industry. I think people don't realize how concentrated this industry is. And it's in Seattle and San Francisco. So I think this reinforcing loop of intolerance that we're seeing, the censorship, bigotry really coming from it, is because they're in a bit of an echo chamber. They're in a certain area out there. It's geographic. It's pretty small. And it's highly intolerant. It's does not reflect the values of the American people, and it is absolutely not moderate at all. But they don't realize that.
So that's a bigger political context. Then, is that why you moved your company from California to Texas?
It is why, and what I realized is, you see a lot of bad fruits coming from these companies, and we see, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera. But we're also seeing Spotify deplatforming certain things or taking down stuff that is not appropriate for the, whatever you want to call it, woke crowd, and or intolerant crowd, or cancel culture, whatever you might want to call it. And we also see other groups doing the same thing. But what's the underlying problem here? It's the soil. It's not the fruit. The fruit, it has poison in it, but it's coming from the soil. So we had to uproot our company. We didn't have to, but I chose to strategically, and we moved it to Texas. And the solution here, Montse, is that we've got to build new technology leadership. We can't do it out of Silicon Valley, out of Seattle, and we can't really get an alliance with people who are intolerant. Even with our company, right, we're raising capital at Rex, and we're not accepting capital from people who are against American ideals. Now, that might sound like, oh, we're going to close off a lot of capital. Well, I'm fine with that. I don't want people getting rich off our success anyways. And then additionally, beyond that, I don't want to be in partnership with these types of people who are intolerant towards others.
Then how does your faith influence your work in this way, your values, the way you lead your company?
I mean, it influences everything. If you look at Rex.com, you can see our leading virtue is love, right? I mean, where does that come from? Faith, hope, and love. Of these three, the greatest thing is love, right? So, and it just permeates everything I do. Now, we are a secular company. We're not a religious company. We're a place that I want atheists, anybody, Protestant, anybody, doesn't matter. They don't need to be Roman Catholic, right? As long as they can come in and we can align on ideals, almost like American ideals, really, then we can fight together. And I want to preserve their liberty, and I want them to preserve my liberty as well.
A true understanding of pluralism. Well, you say that tech needs God. You came to this conclusion in hoping that tech will be more sensitive to religious consumers, but you seem to have a broader point about tech being less of a driver of innovation because of this bigotry. Is this right? Are we not innovators when we don't have faith?
Well, faith, I think, does help with innovation. Why? There's a number of reasons why I can get into, but partly it's, even especially Christian faith, we have concepts like, in order to receive, you must give, right? In giving that you receive, and you must lose your life to gain it. Things like this, right? And we also believe in eternal life and that things don't just end here, right? So we have a lot of hope. And this is reflected in our own families, how we have, children and families so centric. But beyond that, even separately, outside of faith, what I would say is an intolerant environment that doesn't accept people of different viewpoints and ideas that they sharply disagree with, but they still allow to have in the room for conversation, is a place that is not going to have continued innovation and service of humanity. And the reason why is that you need to have edge case points of view, because those types of views that are different than yours are going to inform you of what is true and help you to see that certain ways of doing things are not as smart. Because naturally, all of us, right, we get used to what we're doing. There's a saying, right, that Henry Ford, they say, it's attributed to him, that he said, I didn't want to build a faster horse. And everyone at the time, they wanted faster horses, right? He had the idea of building something very different, the car, which revolutionized human society, right? So, and in order to do that, you need to have an acceptance of people that have outside points of view, because those people are going to challenge the status quo and help move things forward. And that's at the heart of innovation.
Knowing how to be challenged and growing in faith through those challenges as well. Thank you so much, Peter.
Montse, thank you.